Could Sage Mode Naruto capture Killer Bee if he was in Sasuke's position? This felt like an interesting video or topic to get into because I've seen some discourse here and there about this, and I know Sage Naruto versus Heavy Sasuke is a debate. I also know that Sage Naruto versus 5 Kage Summit Sasuke is a debate, and I've even seen people go as far as saying Sage Naruto versus Taka Sasuke is a debate. So why don't I throw our boy Sage Naruto in Taka Sasuke's position first to see if he can beat Bee outright or manage to capture him. If it isn't clear already though, this is going to be a versus battle matchup and not a what if storytelling type video. So no, I'm not going to explain what led up to Naruto attacking Bee or why he's working with the Akatsuki. I'm going to be talking about how one person outscales the other and how one will win the fight and whatnot. To start, I'll quickly go over which forms of these characters I'll be using. So obviously it's going to be Killer Bee from when he did fight Taka Sasuke, so no Samehada to make that clear, and whatever circumstances he was prone to during that fight will also be the same, and I'm mainly talking about his training session from right before the fight. I'll talk about that later though. So yeah, basic Killer Bee from the fight we saw, and his opponent will be Pain Arc Sage Naruto, so not 5 Kage Summit Sasuke Naruto, which there isn't a whole lot of difference between the two forms. I guess you can make a case for him being more experienced with Sage Mode considering he fought Pain with it and he had his very brief training session after the fight using it. So just to make things more fair to like the timeline and matchup, it will be Pain Arc Sage Naruto versus Killer Bee from the Taka fight. I'll get into these characters a little before the fight and explain their abilities. So starting with Bee, I actually think he's pretty slept on, I won't lie to you. I've seen a lot of people brush him off, so let's start with the obvious. He absolutely slaughtered Taka Sasuke. I already have a video on Killer Bee versus Taka Sasuke about the arguments of what actually went down, so check that out because I won't be getting into it in depth here, but Bee beat Sasuke plain and simple. This Sasuke though is in a weird spot in the series as he's weaker than Heavy Sasuke with a whole different arsenal of jutsu, and he's also weaker than 5 Kage Summit Sasuke, so you know this should be pretty clear, but feats from either of those times cannot be used to upscale Taka Sasuke. Like, you can't say he did something to Danzo or the Raikage because he's just monumentally stronger than he was here, and I hope we all understand that. Bee, though, has his 7 swords. He has lightning release, which he uses to infuse into those swords and other objects like pencils and anything of the sort to turn into weapons. He has his lariat, which is a very powerful and fast attack. Then he has Gyuki, the 8 tails within him. So he gets everything that allows, so partial transformation, full transformation, Biju Rays and Biju Damas, and Genjutsu resistance because of that. On to Naruto, we are all more familiar with him I hope, and thankfully his arsenal is pretty straightforward since he has Sage Mode obviously, so he gets the Fragata, he gets the sensory buff and everything else that comes with it, and since Sasuke had help in Team Taka, I'll actually give Naruto Ma and Pa here and his 2 shadow clones for the Sage Chakra like he had against Pain. For his actual jutsus though, he has his multi-shadow clones, Rasengan variants, both Rasen Shuriken and regular Rasengan, and that's really it. Naruto's bag is not very deep at all in this point in the series. Getting to the actual matchup though, not many people notice this or like to take it into consideration when talking about Bee here, and that's the fact he was actually training right before the original fight takes place, and it was in my opinion a pretty intense session because he was using the full 8 tails transformation as you can see by the shadow, and it's also implied it was quite a decent sum of time since when he walked out of the cave he was in, his eyes weren't adjusted to the light and he says, "Noon already," adding on to the implication that a decent chunk of time has passed. Now, yes, he was in a dark cave, so his eyes would be used to the dark, but from that statement and the one about the time that has passed, and the statement later about Bee using the 8 tails, meaning he doesn't have a lot of chakra left, does lead me to the conclusion that he was training hard and for some unquantifiable amount of time. During the fight itself, Bee also was not going all out towards Team Taka, and there were times he just straight up wasn't trying to unalive them either. So with all of this being said, Bee clearly isn't near full power, which makes all of Team Taka's feats and moves during this fight pretty questionable at best since they were fighting a Bee that was nerfed and not full power to some extent. With that out of the way, let's look at Naruto's Sage Mode and get this out there instantly. Sage Mode is not inherently weaker than KCM. It's not as simple as, oh, KCM is a power-up that comes after, so it's stronger in all aspects, because that's just false. But don't get this mistaken as me saying Naruto was weaker when he had KCM either. No, Naruto was stronger with KCM than he was with Sage Mode, but it's not strictly due to KCM if that makes sense. While the speed might be something that's better with KCM, Naruto's reaction time is better with Sage Mode, and we can see this with him choosing to use the form against the 4th Raikage when all he had to do was dodge and hit A's arm back into himself, and Sage Mode gives that sensory and precog abilities. So while people will argue that B should outspeed Naruto due to the KCM and B fights during the war, saying he can outright blitz and get around Naruto to land all these hits that go unreplied is super disingenuous. With all of this being said though, B is a character that in the war is at least equal to KCM1 Naruto, and when he does go full Biju mode, there are moments that he can show relativity to KCM2 Naruto. And while I will admit this is all a B that isn't coming straight off of a training session, if you go and read through the Sasuke and B fight itself, you can see him not trying to his full extent and not fighting with complete killing intent. Also, I would like to add on, since I am talking about the scaling in this section, Sage Naruto, whether you like it or not, is very equal to 5 Kage Summit Sasuke. I do not care whether you think he beat Sasuke or not, but at the end of the day, saying anything other than those two are equal, if not almost as close to equal as two people can be, it should go without saying that this Naruto is by far the second strongest, if not the strongest opponent B has faced. To touch on pre-war B versus war B quickly, if we put all of that debater stuff to the side, pre-war B and early war B should basically be very similar to each other in almost every way, as the only thing that happens from this Taka fight to the war was B's fight with Kisame, where neither of them were going all out, and specifically B, since we're talking about him, he didn't go all out either, and the fight wasn't actually too long in length. B fought this without using a majority of his arsenal, so while I do know and I am aware that his statement saying actual fighting is better to become stronger than training, it's very disingenuous to say this one skirmish with Kisame would have amped B in some monumental way to make every feat from the early war B void. Obviously, if you're going to be a big debater person, it's as simple as saying fighting makes you stronger and B had a fight leading up to the war, so using any feats from the war is a stronger version of B and isn't allowed. Which, fair dues, yes, that's technically right, but there isn't a single time in the series that a fight like that, where they weren't using their full power, gave some huge power up to someone that isn't caused by some other factor getting amped throughout it, like the Sharingan would, or a mental amp, or something else of the sorts. So yes, while I may mention a war arc feat from B, keep all of that in mind. If we want to get into straight up stats, I can start with speed, and it's pretty obvious to me who's faster. So his speed from the war, if he isn't getting amped by Samehara, will still be what he's capable of here, and he is fighting alongside KCM Naruto, and KCM is faster than Sage Mode. I don't need to argue that really, it's pretty common knowledge. So just off that and the feats he has shown fighting alongside Naruto in the war, B just blatantly puts him above Naruto in terms of speed. Even to slightly touch on strength here, base B during the war beat out the 4th Raikage's lariat when he was using his lightning cloak. So basically, you can say base B's strength is greater than that of V1 Raikage, who was overwhelming 5 Kage Summit Sasuke, who's just blatantly equal if not stronger than Sage Naruto. The proof is there, go check chapter 543 where it happens, but I just had to say that because I've seen some people on my community post say that B is weaker than the 4th Raikage and always has been, but the proof of him beating out the Raikage lariat to lariat is there, so go and take a look. I don't think there's really a need to get into every single stat because a few of them already get talked about when discussing win cons, but speed is one that in my opinion is the most important to get figured out, so that's why it's just separate from the rest. Keep in mind, all of this was while he was in base. So if you add on the V2 cloak for B, then everything is just inherently better, stronger, faster than what was shown. This also helps if we want to use the argument that Taka fight B is weaker than War Arc B because of the Kisame fight. This is what he did in base. So if you add on the V2 cloak, it just makes more sense that if he goes full power during the Taka fight, he's just stronger than what was shown. In terms of jutsus and counters and fight styles for B it's interesting because depending on what form he's in, it could be easier for Naruto to counter even if B is technically stronger because of that. For example, in base when B's fighting with his swords, he's very random and sporadic, and this is even noted by Suigetsu saying you can barely read this line of attack, and Sasuke while having his 3 Tomoe active is still getting cut up by the swords. So if B does this against Naruto, he is landing attacks. I don't think Naruto would be able to accurately track the attacks in Sage Mode if it did play out exactly like Sasuke's fight did. But just like Sasuke, when B starts to use the 8-Tails cloak and his moves start becoming very linear and easier to react to, Naruto in Sage Mode would be able to counter B if he came flying at him, since we see Naruto use Sage Mode to react and counter the 3rd Raikage during the war. And yes, this is a stronger Naruto, but it's just an example of him using Sage Mode precog to react and counter linear movement, which could pose issues for B if he just relies on these attacks. Let's stop messing around and yapping and get down to the important stuff I haven't mentioned yet though. Naruto's Rasen Shuriken is a problem for B, especially if he fully transforms into Gyuki, because if he makes himself that big of a target, I have no doubt in my mind Naruto is landing 1 or 2 on him, and that's wraps for B right there. And Naruto's other win con in this fight is Frog Song. I said earlier that Naruto was allowed Ma and Pa with him along with 2 shadow clones, and let's be real here, Frog Song will decimate B and Gyuki. It's a genjutsu that, according to Jiraiya, causes a paralysis that binds your psyche and says that their bodies will not be able to move, which is backed up by the data book, where it basically just re-says that same thing, but words it slightly differently by saying their minds are paralyzed, which is the same thing. If you go and look back when Jiraiya used it against Pain, he actually caught multiple pains in there. So yes, Frog Song is able to get multiple brains and bodies, which means Gyuki would be put under the genjutsu as well, so there's no teamwork to slap him out of there. These are the 2 ways I can see Naruto winning here, but let me go over why B can and will win this fight most of the time. See, I can admit that Sage Naruto can win, like if he gets B in a Frog Song he can win, and I'm not saying that this is a blowout for B, I genuinely think it's a mid-diff fight for him, even though he's already at a disadvantage in this setup, while Naruto has everything going for him with the help he's granted and the prep time he had against Pain. B is just a different beast, and he's the strongest person in this point in the series, Obito aside. To add on to the point of Naruto's win con of the Rasen Shuriken, if he does launch one at B while he's transformed, B can just counter it with the Biju Bomb or one of his Biju Rays, and it will just nullify the Rasen Shuriken. So while that is a win con if he does hit, I do believe B has that counter of just blasting it with a Biju Dama. One thing we need to keep in mind is at this point during the Taka fight, we haven't even seen anything close to B's full power. He didn't even go into V2, and he barely went into the full transformation, and the only reason that backfired was Sasuke's Amaterasu. But Naruto doesn't have that, he has a Rasen Shuriken and only a limited amount of them at best. And B in V1 and even in V2 outspeeds Sage Naruto, so he doesn't need to go into full transformation to beat him, and in character, B does not like to do that right off the bat. There's a high probability that if he does have to transform, it would be after Naruto's time limit of Sage Mode runs out, but at that point, base Naruto is not beating even base B. So all that really has to happen in this fight is B has to just wait out the time limit of Sage Mode, which is completely possible if he doesn't just beat Naruto while in V2 anyways. B is faster, more experienced, has the cooperation of his tailed beast, and he isn't limited by the short time limit and ammo capacity when it comes to his strongest move like Naruto is. Naruto has a very limited amount of Rasen Shuriken he can use while in Sage Mode, and he only has 2 clones to his disposal, and when those run out, B is not going to let Naruto sit there and gather a nature chakra. If it's a close fight, B will just end it. And when Naruto runs out of Sage Chakra, the only downfall of B transforming into Gyuki, which is making him a larger target for the Rasen Shuriken to hit, is now completely gone. So B can just rain Biju Damas on top of Naruto and it's wraps. Even if Naruto has Sage Mode, he's not going to tank multiple Biju Damas from Gyuki. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is Naruto's Kurama. And a lot of people would like to say, okay, well if he transforms into the 8-Tails, like he goes berserk, then he wins. In my eyes, in these videos, if Naruto doesn't have full control of his conscious, then that's not a him win. That's why I've neglected to talk about any 9-Tails transformation, because it is basically irrelevant since we're talking about Sage Naruto from the Pain arc, and like I said, if he doesn't have complete control over his conscious at the time, then I don't count that as a Naruto win. Even if you want to give him up to 4 tails, B still wins, so it doesn't really matter how many tails you give Naruto while he has full control of the Biju and his body, he will still lose to this B who has full control over his Biju and can just match the same amp. So to kind of give my conclusion on this topic, can Sage Naruto capture B or can Sage Naruto beat Killer B? Yes he can, given the circumstances I laid out with his prep time and Frog Song help, but Killer B, even with the unquantifiable nerf of being fatigued to an extent and not showing his full power in this arc, would still be able to beat Sage Naruto more times than not in my opinion. High diff fight for Naruto if he doesn't use Frog Song to win. low to mid diff for B if that does not happen. Hey, I'm sure I got some stuff wrong or overlooked some scaling, and I know the comments will point that out. So please let me know what I missed and what your opinions are on this topic in the comment section, because when I first started thinking about this topic and when I was writing it, I genuinely had Sage Mode Naruto taking this pretty handedly. I actually thought he would be overpowering B in many ways that I can just give him the overall win here in this video, but it turns out the more I started typing and the further I got into making this, I ended up switching on my original opinion and started repping the Killer Bee W, which is always really cool to see happen. I know the comments are harsh, but try not to be too ruthless on me here. It's just a learning experience and for some fun content. If you liked the video, subscribe for more. I post Boruto and Naruto content weekly every Thursday. And yeah, join the Discord and become a member, all of that stuff. And like always, have a good day.